Hey, what do you think of when you hear Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, or TikTok?
These are the platforms that we use to send pictures, DM, spy on our exes, talk to each other over video chat. But none of these platforms would exist without Friendster. On this episode, we find out what happened to Friendster.
This is What Happened to Friendster. YouTube, I'm back, ready to drop another episode for y'all. Let's rewind to 2002 in Mountain View, California, Silicon Valley, the home of all tech startups. Former software engineer John Abrams bounced around from startup to startup during the dot-com bust and was a former employee at Netscape, which was an early internet browser. He came up with a new idea for a social media site influenced by Match.com. While walking with a friend, chatting about online and offline problems, the idea came to him. Basically, this idea was each person would have a standardized homepage, kind of like Match.com, but instead of simply advertising their interests and good looks, users could link their profiles to those of their friends, creating a network of connections that would mirror those that existed in real life. John pitched his idea to 20 of his closest friends. All of his friends loved the idea. Now, 4 years after the initial idea, Abrams would be awarded a patent for his idea called the systems method, which would be described as an apparatus for connecting users in an online computer system. Pretty much what all social networks are today. But back to the story. Abrams saw this as a far more powerful tool and the potential to be an upgrade over Match.com.
And of course, instead, I ended up inventing Friendster.
Right.
And I, of course, when I was working on it, I had no idea how.
Right. And when that happens, is it just...
During this time, the only way to connect to other users on the internet was strictly by invitation only. Bypassing the weird invitation method of connecting with people, the beauty of Friendster was its exhaustively complete network. Every time a homepage loaded, Friendster's server calculated a single user's connection to other users within 4 degrees of separation. After Abrams designed the initial prototype, he sought after funding. He received his initial seed capital, which was just $2,000 from his former boss at Hotlinks, where he used to work. Melissa Lloyd and her husband gave Abrams $2,000, and basically they said, don't come back again, just take the money and never talk about this again. So now, 2003, over the next few months, Abrams rounded up $400,000 from dozens of investors.
And I need money.
Well, actually, by the time this was taking place, Friendster had already grown exponentially. It had already broken over 1 million users without being institutionally funded.
Right.
It had already been in almost every magazine and newspaper in the country. It had been on TV. And actually, almost every VC in Silicon Valley was calling me.
Wow.
So it was one of those unique situations. So raising VC funding for Friendster in the fall of 2003 was very easy. And many VCs were actually mad at me when they were not selected to be investors in the company.
He opened Friendster in March 2003. The site grew virally as Abrams' friends invited their friends, and by June, it had 835,000 registered members. Now, this is the part of the story where things get a little crazy. The growth presented immediate engineering headaches. In theory, Abrams' intricate network was a beautiful thing, but in practice, the constant calculations, which were being continuously served on millions of homepages, required more than 1 terabyte of expensive RAM. Also, there were complaints of slow loading times of over a minute per page. All the blogs and forums were just lit up with complaint after complaint. One of the engineers at Friendster recalled that, direct quote, "We would fix one problem and then a few days later, there would be another bottleneck." Abrams thought that simply buying enough servers to keep up with the growth was a major challenge. Abrams thought that to solve the problem, he needed more money, and that money would need people to manage it. So like any of our greatest tech startups, venture capitalists need to get their hands on this idea. Abrams raised $1 million from Ram Shriram, early investor in Google, Peter Thiel, who co-founded PayPal, and Tim Kugel, who served as CEO of Yahoo from 1995 to 2001. Now, this single event in the Friendster timeline is seen as the downfall of Friendster and would soon become the moment when Friendster became a laughingstock in Silicon Valley. 3 months later, he turned down a $30 million acquisition offer from Google. Let me say that again. 3 months later, he turned down $30 million from Google in favor of $13 million from Kleiner Perkins, one of the VCs, who was in charge of Benchmark Capital. At the time, they valued Friendster at $53 million. Looking back, they probably should have took that Google money. At this point, John is enjoying himself. He's pretty much hands-off when it comes to making major business decisions for Friendster, and this is the beginning of the revolving door of CEOs. And during 2004, going into 2005, we see the rise of MySpace and also Facebook. Heavy competition for Friendster. MySpace was not the elegant web of connections, but rather the opportunity to gawk at strangers. Rather than using Friendster to make dates, most of its users were simply just cruising around and looking for weird interests, pictures, and blog droppings of strangers. Social networks were changing, but Friendster and the people who were in charge just completely ignored the trends. Also, one other weird kind of thing that happened during this time, Friendster chose to focus on the Asian market. Some of the engineers at Friendster noticed that in 2004, more than half of the site's traffic was coming from Southeast Asia, and that could be linked to just one user. So Friendster tried some different things at this point. Friendster's business model changed from a social network to a gaming platform around 2009, 2010. So what killed Friendster? These are a couple quotes from people who worked at Friendster and some of the high-up managers and venture capitalists. We had an inexperienced founder and a lot of experience and high-powered board members, says Kleiner Siegelman. There were too many cooks in the kitchen. He never got anyone's attention, and in 2005, he was completely stripped of his chairmanship. He completely just stopped coming into the office. In hindsight, the decision to pretty much isolate Abrams and just completely ignore him, inexperienced engineers, probably was a bad move. Rather than address the problems of too many calculations, Sasa, one of the early VCs, opted to make massive investments in hardware and software in 2004. So on the surface, most people would say MySpace killed Friendster and Facebook was kind of the knockout punch after purchasing patents that Abrams created for $40 million. But if you dig a little deeper, this was a perfect case of mismanagement and bad leadership. The creator was completely ignored and trusted his creation to venture capitalists.
Even though Abrams failed with his initial idea of Friendster, Friendster and Abrams together helped millions of people, and he was able to leave a legacy. So because he was able to help so many people, he was rewarded at the end. This is what happened to Friendster.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode. If you want to know more about this story, head over to Inc.com. There's a great article called How to Kill a Great Idea by Max Shefkin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But most of the information in the video was pulled and influenced from that article. This is a pretty long, in-depth article. It talks about everything from the beginning all the way to the end and where John Abrams is today and some of his new businesses that he started. Hey, stay tuned for the next episode of What Happened To.